Okay, if I was teaching a film class, there would be three noirs that I would use as an option to understand what noir is. First would be Double Indemnity. Second would be Detour. But the third one would definitely be Out of Past. And I was to give those three options. And today we're going to talk about the one of those three.
Yeah, so we're coming from you out of the present to talk a film out of the past from the director of A Cat Person and starring a cat
people.
person.
Cat people. From the director Cat People, right.
So join us for Out of the Past. Welcome back to the show. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe from GoatFilmReviews.com.
I am Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast. Thanks for finding us. Thanks for watching. And for our loyal fans, thank you for continuing to support the show. You can follow the show on Twitter and on Instagram. We do have a Patreon, of course. Check that out for some deals to tell us what to do. Both Kyle and I are members of the Minnesota Film Critics Alliance. Check out that webpage for other critics' reviews as well as ours. And today we're going to talk about what is kind of the staple of noirs. If you want to say what is a noir, you tell them this movie. It's Out of the Past.
All right, so Jeff Bailey has made a life for himself as a small-town gas station owner with a loving girlfriend, Anne.
Yeah.
But Jeff also has a past involving a torrid love affair, several betrayals, and a reason to disappear. Well, Jeff's done with the past, but it's not exactly done with him when he's found by his old colleagues.
Okay, so I said this is one of the epitomes of what a noir is, but when you have a femme fatale, she has the most least film noir name of all time. It's Katie Moffat, which is just kind of the most flat noir kind of a female character's name.
That's true.
Yeah. So, we critique Cat People, so you want to stop the tape and look at what for the original Cat People.
Go back to the past.
Yeah, 1942, RKO's big budget movie. And from Cat People 1942 with Val Lewton doing production, RKO is pretty much established as the house that noir built. They were actually doing other movies, but their staple was noirs, and they would continue from 42 to 47 to make staple monumental footnote noir films. And finally got their footing on exactly how to make it perfectly, but until this movie, 1947, they made Out of the Past using, of course, Jock, the cinematographer and the director of Cat People.
Yeah.
So if you want to make a good noir, why don't you go back to the people that kind of started it almost?
Yeah, that's true. They kind of, and RKO, it seemed like they had a particular trust in Jacques Tourneur. When they gave him a larger budget in this film. They were known for B pictures, the B side of those double features, a little bit lower cost, like let's get the money where it needs to go and let's use it to the best of our abilities, which is something you can do pretty well with noir because you turn off some lights, you get some good shadow in there, like you can do it on the cheap. It is available if you just get the high-end performances that'll take it.
This is a definitely high-class B movie.
Yeah, because they gave it an A budget. A lot of it, more of it is outside. We get a lot of things, with some I don't want to say like grand vistas, but there's definitely less shadow play in the film.
That's really weird, yes. Less shadow play, but more exterior, but it's still the staple of like noir-y kind of,
Yeah, it's a film that I almost was convinced wasn't one until they end up in the car, and I'm like, oh, that darkness. Okay, there it is. And it's a movie of two bits for me because it does play into the noir in the latter half. But in the first half, I didn't really know what kind of a film this was going to be. Because it does kind of play against type. It seems like there's a romance, and I actually really found the romance intriguing, the one between Kathy and Jeff, Robert Mitchum. I never thought I'd find a romance with Robert Mitchum to be so
It's clever that
enticing.
The romance has nothing to do with his girlfriend in the movie.
And I'm wondering, why are you telling me? I mean, no one talks about past girlfriends.
He has a girlfriend, but the romance is really who he's not with.
Yeah, that's the play at what's there. And so for that part of it, I was really taken with the interesting framing device. Where's it going to go? The love affair, and I thought his chemistry with Jane Greer was actually really good. I loved Jane Greer in this movie because she does play just like every other femme fatale you've ever seen. But then she does it really where you don't really think about that. You're not really thinking about how she's playing it like to the end. Like she's playing it the best you can possibly do it because you're kind of involved in the romance, in the emotional connection that she seems to have. And so you almost don't want there to be a but,
But it's perfectly shot how she enters the cafe. And Robert Mitchum's been waiting for her in the cafe in Mexico, and she just comes in like a cool glass of water. Everybody else is just, and then she just comes in like a breeze. And then of course, Robert Mitchum's narration fits perfectly for this movie. Not a lot of movies are effective, but Noir is one of the staple tropes is narration, and Robert Mitchum's narrations for this is just great.
Yeah.
She comes in like a cool glass of water, or she runs at me like a girl coming out of school. Those kind of lines.
Yeah. And I thought it was funny that there was this whole interplay of, while filming, Robert Mitchum kept asking like what the lyrics were. He kept asking what his lyrics are for every single scene, and Greer would kind of chide him like, you don't know what you're supposed to say, and he's like, I'll figure it out, And she always felt he was going to go off the cuff. She later found out he knew all of it, but he liked to have kind of someone feed him the lines to kind of get so he could play with it a little bit more, so he could pretend to be a little bit more off the cuff. I like that first scene because she shows up, she has like 3 lines of dialogue, and then she's gone. And it's almost, she's spectral.
Just like Kathleen Turner in Body Heat.
Yeah. She's there just long enough for you to get a glimpse and to immediately fall in love with her. And that's the problem that you have then, is then you're like, when's the next scene that she's going to be in?
And that ultimate betrayal that after all that transpired, then he goes back to see Whit, and she's there.
Yep. Yeah. Well, it's you still don't know at that point why she's there. Did she get caught? Did she get pulled back in? Did she choose to go back? We have so many questions during that interaction. And you know what? We have to give the fact, too, that Jeff's moved on with his life. She
Gas
probably
station
did,
buddy,
too.
yeah.
There's all these people that have moved on. It's a story of 2 different time periods, and the absence in between is what's so heartbreaking.
Yeah. So it's with effective noir, I would say when the whole frame up of the killing of Mr. Eels, very noir, you know, tailing, and then he comes out of the shadows. But also his Jeff's partner, who figured out what the hell is actually going on with him and Katie, and the whole duo fighting, and you can see her eyes just kind of enjoying it. Mm-hmm. And then she finally kills him, and he's like, "What the hell did you do that for?" Why not?
Yeah.
Why not? Then you know exactly what kind of person it is. You kind of don't really know who Katie Moffat is until that scene. Then you're like, oh, she's capable of doing anything. You are dangerous. It's almost like Melty Falcon. Now you are dangerous.
That's the question. And you know what's funny is I actually have this weird thought about a Star Wars movie watching this, and it was like Solo. Because there's also that same kind of thing between Han Solo and his girlfriend in that film, was that they get separated for many years, get back together, and she's with the bad guy, and he's now like working for the bad guy. And I was wondering to myself, I was like, I know it's not exactly right, but there's a lot of elements that are similar in the story devices for our lead characters in both films. I don't know if it was intentional at all. That film was pretty much hobbled together, so it's probably not. But I saw those kinds of elements that were still at play now, is the 2 people that had something going. Time passes and they're separated. Now they're different people.
Yeah, and you don't really know from her perspective. It was just her being bored.
Yeah.
And playing with him.
That's the question, is we never really get, I mean, we do get it, but we don't really get it for a bulk of the film, is why. Like, the whys of it all. They're all understandable, but why?
I think, in essence, if you watch it, if you haven't seen the movie, God, please see the movie before we talk about it. But in the essence, she thinks he is just as awful as she is.
Yeah.
And that's probably why she goes back to Whit. Is, he's awful, but, I had enough with him. His resources have dried up.
Yeah, that's true, too.
So, everybody in this movie, Jane Greer's first time in her movie. She did some movie, but this is her breakout film. Robert Mitchum and Kirk Douglas, all of them under the age of 30. You have Rhonda Fleming, who just came from, she's in there for a little bit, but she is in there for just coming from after doing Alfred Hitchcock's movie Spellbound a year earlier, 1945. So you have a lot of people who are just starting the career. You think Jane Greer after this would have a great, phenomenal success story. What happened was after 1947, RKO was bought out by Howard Hughes, and he completely collapsed the whole production. He was a micromanager. What they were establishing for production of, successful B movies, making money with that, like out of the past, and really building up the house. Here comes Howard Hughes, and he just wrecked it. From 1951, they were pretty much bankrupt. And from Jane Greer, he had her under contract. He kind of solicited her. She turned him down, and he pretty much blacklisted her. That's the reality of it. And Robert Mitchum and everybody was upset about it. Robert Mitchum and Jane Greer actually got along. They were not really romantically involved. They were just best friends. They really appreciate each other.
I thought it was funny that when they first had their first scene together was the kiss scene. And he showed up, and she said that he had something on his mouth, on his lips. I think he was like, "Did you put something on there to mess with me?" And he's like, "No, it's chewing tobacco." And he goes, "All right, I'm ready." Like, clearly no romantic connection between them, but there's a chemistry between them that elevates that. You can see that the friendship that's there because it elevates.
Almost like a big brother kind of a thing.
Yeah. And when you mentioned Kirk Douglas, I had looked it up, and this was his third film role of note. He was in 2 other film roles, and they weren't like the main guy. This is like the breakout for Kirk Douglas, an actor we just recently lost at 103. So the beginning of a long dynasty of Kirk Douglas.
And it was an open, very much open, that Robert and Kirk did not get along.
Yeah, according to the material I was reading, I found this chapter in a Noir book that had talked about it that said that they didn't get along at the beginning because their acting styles were so different and they couldn't find a way to complement each other, and it led to that friction. But by the end of the film, they'd figured out exactly how each other was acting, and they were able to feed each other kind of elements to make it work. And it sounded like they got along better much after the film, but it was like a 2 butting heads of we don't know how the other guy performs.
Well, you can understand Kurt is pretty much wound up.
Yeah,
he's all
running like this.
Yeah. And Robert's like, "This is how it's going to be. Fine, what the hell?"
Yeah.
And this is a year before. This film came out a year before Robert Mitchum's famous drug, marijuana bust, which is a big deal at the time. He got arrested for having marijuana and almost wrecked his career. He had to slowly come back. And the next movie he actually made was another from Noir. I think it's called The Big Steal with Jane Greer, which RKO financed with Howard Hughes. I think around 50-51, they finally got Jane Greer to do another movie, and there's Robert Mitchum very much getting her back into movies, telling him what to do. But this is this unique thing of Robert Mitchum. It's kind of like
He's so relaxed in the film. And when going back to your RKO, I would love to see, there's books about the material. I would love to see a film about the fall of RKO.
I would love to.
A movie about the movies, and just watching that thing sink from within, because it was a legendary studio. And if it was still around today, it would be part of the, we talk about Warner Brothers and Paramount. We talk about RKO in the same kind of way.
Because they took big risks. And then one of the big, we talked about with Cat People, the big change of not doing genius films of Citizen Kane to doing B movies and making small profits with small budgets and getting a nice established house. And then Howard Hughes comes in and takes the rug out.
Yeah, they were doing exactly what Lionsgate would do decades later, where they would just feed these smaller productions that would get big acclaim and then start pushing for bigger. Blumhouse is currently doing that right now with a different genre, but Blumhouse is we'll give you a couple million, just make something great. That's what RKO was doing. It was basically a precursor to all those elements. But yeah, you're right. Mitchum, he's so laid back in the movie that you get the sensation that he doesn't really want to find out the answers because maybe those aren't going to feel good.
He kind of almost like he knows them.
Yeah.
Because he talks about, I can only see the frame. I don't know no story, but I just can see the frame, and that's the problem.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But he still does it. I like that other underlying current of this movie is stupidity meets smarts.
Yeah.
Because with that line, Rhonda Fleming's character, "Are you that stupid? Hey, that's another way to be smart. Act stupid."
Yeah. It's not, that's the thing, too, is it's not just stupid characters and smart characters. There's stupidity and brains in every single person in the film because each one of them seems to make good choices and bad choices almost on the turn of a dime. They're maybe fed by their emotions in some ways, by what they want, because everyone is connected in this weird, twisted web.
Because Jeff Bailey's consciousness is throughout the whole movie. He has no business falling in love with Jane Greer's character, Kitty Moffat, but he can't help himself.
Yeah.
And we all can't help him.
As is usually the case,
And I do like that scene where he's almost like a Dracula coming through the window to tell her, "Hey, your buddy that you sent to murder me, he's dead. Can you whip up some tears for him?" What the?
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite scenes all in cinema history. One of the staples, and I would use this for Writer's Workshop, is dialogue writing. This is flowing dialogue writing. I'd like to hear about your opinion, but I told him one of the things I enjoy about this movie is how dialogue just comes out natural, but it's kind of almost seems unnatural. But this movie fits dialogue perfect.
It's something that we would later credit to Tarantinian in some ways, in the 90s, because there is a certain playfulness to the dialogue. There's a certain talking about things that aren't important, but the subtext is important. Mitchum himself, I don't think, answers a question in the entire film. He just throws it back at whoever says it. And in that way, it kind of makes me wonder how the film would have turned out had he not been cast, because he was the 4th choice for the film. I don't know if the first 3 would have had the same kind of charisma with the dialogue that he plays in. Because you're right, it does even sound, like I was mentioning earlier, it does sound like he doesn't know his lines. And he's kind of just running off the cuff and just kind of, hitting you back.
They say when you died and your name's written in the clouds. Who says
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
They,
Yeah.
well, who the hell are they? It's almost like Dean Martin kind of half sauce, just throwing it back at you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I could see him having this kind of an argument with the dialogue coach instead, like off the set. It's like, who says that? Who are they? Like, not really like, why'd you write this line like that? And he's kind of playing it at the same people who say it. He's dissecting them.
But it's clever. I like the clever writing of, well, how come you can't find her? Maybe she knows because I got squeaky shoes on. She sees me coming.
Yeah.
And then he gets his new shoes. Well, you
Yeah.
get these. You bought these on my money? I told you I got squeaky shoes.
Yeah. He's clever, not exactly smart all the time, but clever.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
There's a difference between being smart and being clever. He sees the frame, but he's still going with it.
Clever will get you shot. Smart may not.
So, the most experienced film actor in the movie is the youngest, Dickie Moore, who plays the mute assistant at the gas station, Dickie Moore, who was actually was in silent films when he was a baby, and he had by the time this movie came out and he was in this movie, he was still younger than a lot of the other people, but he already had hundreds of movies under his belt. He was the most experienced one, but he played the mute, and he's the same age as Jane Greer. I think he was 22, and Jane Greer,
credited as the kid, but he's like months away from most of the other actors.
But he had the most experience, which is kind of funny. He's the kid, but everybody else is just starting new. But that's really, check out Dickie Moore's career.
Was he mute? Like,
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was wondering if it was because you'd said he was in silent films, and
That's
that's
really-
someone who's
that's-
mute would probably do very well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is funny that you point that out because, he's so close to the other characters, but he's referenced as the kid. I would argue that for a character that has zero dialogue, the complete antithesis of Robert Mitchum's character, he is a scene stealer because what he's able to convey without dialogue is you see everything the character's going for. You see that he could be that wrench in the plan. He could be the person that's going to sell it the bad guys when he gets a chance. No, everyone underestimates him. Like, he's one of my favorite characters for someone who barely any screen time, really not much going on in this character, but he's able to just wrench a few things out of the way of the villains.
I agree.
You know?
And of course, if you want somebody to not speak and really do it with your hands and mannerisms, why don't you get a silent film star?
Yeah.
That's been doing it since he's a baby.
Exactly. And most of those silent film stars kind of were nervous, scared about talkies when they happen because now I have to use my voice. It's not going to last. How's it going to work like that? We're all going to get passed over for people that have better voices than us. And he was like, well, I got a role as a silent film, basically, in the film. So it works out to his to his benefit, I guess.
Wit, played by Kirk Douglas, has a henchman, Joey Fisher. He's played by Paul Valentine. That's it's a made-up show business name. You can look up what his real name was. But he got a career start being a dancer. He was an elegant dancer. In fact, he would dance and show burlesque shows. In fact, he helped a lot of his girlfriends choreograph their burlesque shows, not even participate in burlesque shows, which is very interesting for a guy who kind of was macho and bullish.
Yeah.
But he was an elegant dancer, and he continued to be an elegant dancer even after this film.
I think it was Steve Brody, who I think had done the Caine Mutiny and Desperate and stuff. He, had kind of gotten to start doing that, and he is kind of known for being just a big hulking mass in some ways.
Which is kind of funny. It's almost like you don't expect him to be an elegant dancer and then marry a burlesque show woman.
Yeah, good on his toes.
Yeah.
Is what we'd say.
So this is another film from cinematographer Nicholas, I got to say it right, Muscarera. Muscarera. Who also did Cat People. And we talked about John Seitz with Double Indemnity. He really kind of manufactured what is noir. But I think that's the launch pad. But I think it's Nicholas's vision of what a noir is. Really emphasize what we appreciate. If you said noir and you draw it out, you would use his cinematography for that.
Yeah, I feel like Seitz was was coalescing all these things into what we would deem as like the criteria of noir. Whereas I feel like Nicholas was kind of on the outside. He was the one who was trying some new things because as this film is considered one of the best film noirs, I do think 50% of the film doesn't feel like a film noir.
No,
it
it's
feels
very
like
bright.
an experimentation in a lot of ways.
Very bright, yeah.
Yeah, so it feels like one of them was kind of bridging together what's our criteria for this, I don't want to call it genre, but style.
Yeah.
Nicholas is doing the exact opposite. He goes, what can we try? What can we play with? And that's why I actually find the film way more interesting and exciting when it's breaking away from those rules. When the story itself, when some of the visuals dive back into the noirishness of it, I felt like it kind of became a little bit more comparable to everything else. It stands out when it's really experimenting with the style of it. And that's why I criticize, like, when it gets back to the noirish things, then I started to kind of see where everything was going. and I was more surprised by the elements that were at play in the sunlight with the characters falling in love and stuff. I was like, okay, we're doing something different. So it's kind of a film that dances between the classic and the new.
Yeah, and it's something that I think you will see a lot of Tarantino films. You cut back from the past, go to the future, cut back to, oh, she's back into it again. So it's almost like
the structure's great.
You're breaking up if it's a linear story, it'd be boring as hell. But you break up the structure of why he has a gas station, doesn't want to talk to anybody, and he's got a girlfriend. He's kind of kidding himself of what he really is getting away from is not thinking about her.
Yeah. Well, and most people who live the dangerous life are perfectly content, owning a gas station afterwards, perfectly content with the simplicity that is what's at play. And he seems like he's found a rhythm with Anne, that he's found kind of like, it's boring, but that's kind of why he likes it. And when this intrusion comes in, this old partner kind of shows up and finds him, that he starts to see that facade crumbling. And then all the other bits and pieces, Anne's parents now start to think, oh, like he never comes into the door. He's always at the edge of the walk. We don't like him. And things just start to build and build against, and the whole thing crumbles. And
just like the whole story.
Yeah. And basically by the end of the film, he doesn't have anything left. He's without it all.
And you're always smoking. You want a cigarette? Smoking.
Apparently that was accidental. I read a funny little thing online about that where he was smoking so much for the character that he wasn't supposed to have a cigarette when he went onto the scene.
Of course. Yeah.
And he was offered one and was supposed to take it. And he realized like mid-moment like that he has one still. And so he kind of did the cigarette smoking thing. Those moments, again, they play against type because...
But it seemed natural.
Yeah. He had it. That's, I think, maybe that I learned the lines, but I didn't really learn them well so that he can play with how they're put into the film.
Before we go, I wanted to know, Robert Mitchum left home at age 12 during the Great Depression because his family couldn't afford to feed him, so he went out to find work. And he understands acting because I think when you're 12 years old and you're working jobs with adults, you have to act a certain way to make a living without being harassed, without being noticed, without standing out. So you have to mask what everybody else is doing. So he always he never took any acting classes, but he always seemed acting to him was very natural because it was a survival thing for him to make money as a teenager without getting in trouble, not being picked on, to navigate how you, in a culture of blue-collar men and making money, that you can be in this environment. And he always considered acting the easiest thing he ever did in life.
Yeah, it seems like maybe it's something it wasn't his calling for like what was going to be his thing, but it was a skill that he had that seemed to be really popular, and so he's going to use it.
Hop the rails and you find work. Yeah.
And in fact, when Robert Mitchum hosted Saturday Night Live during his episode,
you can't find this. I want to find it.
I found it.
You found it?
I found it deep in Reddit. The Out of Gas skit that he did hosting SNL. I did find part of the sketch on Reddit. It's pretty funny if you get your hands on it, but it is very tough to find. There's a lot
SNL
of
did a skit about Out of the Past in the early 70s. Yeah.
Yep.
And the town's called Suckerville.
Yep. And it's really weird to me because I think, it's the 70s. The film's not that far removed, but films weren't available on home video. So
it's like 30 years from then.
Yeah, I'm wondering who that sketch is for. Like the film had probably been re-released twice.
Because they're teenagers. They grew up with that movie.
Yeah.
But
as it turns out, that's something that's really fun if you get a chance to check out.
I've only seen it once. Isn't Jane Greer come back and he's like...
I think she's the surprise, is that she's not involved in the hosting duties or anything, but she just pops in.
Ran out of gas at his gas station.
Yeah, so it's a pretty cool little sketch. The film was also remade in 1984 as Against All Odds. Jane Greer appeared in the film as the parents of the Anne character. I don't know if they have the same name.
Remade in the 80s, Against All Odds, yeah.
So I didn't know that, and it's always funny to me when the film has a changed title that is also one that, like, from that time period, you probably didn't need to change the title for this movie because, again, we didn't have home video in the same way.
Very similar to Big Clock and then No Way Out.
Oh, okay. So have you seen the film?
No, just very similar of borrowing a noir from the 40s and then what they did in the 80s. Borrowing a noir from the 40s, change the title, and then kind of 80s and up.
And, of course, we would also have Mitchum and Douglas reappear together in leading roles in the Western film The Way Back, I think it is, or The Way West.
The Way West.
1967.
Yes, good catch.
So they clearly didn't hate each other enough to the point where they refused to work together because they did share another film as leads.
I want to give Robert a bag of weed.
I think you give him any money at all, or you can go buy it too.
Yes. So overall, it's a staple of noirs. If you love noirs, you have to see it, and it'd probably be required filming if I ran a film school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's one of the better film noirs in my mind because it's experimental with the style. I tend to find that I've enjoyed the ones where they experiment with trying some new things, putting them in the old box at the same time. So that way you're not really sure if we're going to get the same meal or something different. Is there a new ingredient? And this film has a couple new ingredients that I think make it stand apart from the others. It also has... it also surprised the hell out of me because Robert Mitchum is a likable lead, and I've only seen a couple Robert Mitchum films, but I always find him to be the least
demonic
likable people.
Right? Yeah.
So seeing him as a likable lead, I was like, something I didn't think he could pull off, and just another notch in his belt, if you will.
Right. And I appreciate it. I just absolutely, when I watch it, just amazed at the dialogue writing. I love it.
So once we finish Cat People, we finish this film, we're probably going to have to do Curse of the Demon at some point, because that's the one that keeps sitting on my list of, like, Jacques Tourneur films.
Yeah, but Why Walk with Zombie eventually.
Oh, that one as well, yeah. So we've got more, I think, on our plate for a director that you may not even know as much, but check out the films. And let us know down below what you thought about Out of the Past.
Absolutely.
Is it a film that belongs in the past, or is it one that predates all future storytelling? Let us know what you thought about it down in the comment section below. And do you like it more than Cat People or less than Cat People? Somewhere in between. Give us that idea down there in the comments. And make sure while you're down there to like and subscribe. They're 2 free things that you can do that make sure you never miss a new episode of the show. And they help support the channel as well, which we really appreciate.
Yes, we absolutely do.
And as Nick mentioned as well, check out that Patreon link down below.
If you join the
for as low as
Patreon,
$1.
if you join the Patreon, you can tell us to do the remake Against All Odds.
Yeah, you can force feed that to us, and we'll do it. Yeah. We will. But yeah, for tiers as low as $1, you can get invested in that. We got things like picks with Kyle and Nick. We got our Patreon exclusive episodes. We got choices that you can make. We got posts in there. We got all sorts of great stuff. Yep. Check out those links down below, and you can find all my film reviews over at goatfilmreviews.com.
You can find my show, the St. Paul Filmcast, anywhere you find podcasts. And if I have to die, I'm not going to be the last.
No, that means I will be.